I really struggled with anxiety. I had bad social anxiety. So to the point where if you say, Adam, we're going to go to this restaurant, I'm thinking about where do I park? When I get inside, like, am I going to look stupid, like trying to figure out where the table is? Like I would overanalyze these things because I was so anxious about it. And then that bad breakup also led to me saying, um, I want to do the things that I said I always wanted to do that I never did. So one of them was travel to Europe, and the other thing was learn German. Long story. Uh, so I
Random.
started learning German, and then consequently, I did my first trip to Europe, which initially wasn't supposed to be a solo trip. A friend was supposed to go. Long story short, he wasn't able to go, but I was continuing my trip. So I went to Berlin. Was it Berlin, Amsterdam, London, and Paris, all by myself. And I've told this story once before. When I got to Berlin, because it was such a big deal, like, oh my god, I'm finally doing it. So when I got to Berlin, it was in the evening. I bought tickets to go to this party, and I don't know anything about Berlin. And I made it to the Airbnb. I finally got there, and the party starts at like midnight, and it's 11 something, and I'm like, all right, am I gonna go? And in my head, I'm like trying to find the excuse not to go. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go outside and see how I can find a way to get there. And I'm walking around, and I'm like, I don't even know how taxis work around here. And I said, if I go around the corner and I don't see any taxis, I'm gonna go back to the Airbnb. And I go around the corner, there's a taxi driver getting a kebab. And I was like, are you in service? He's like, yeah, dude, just give me 1 second. And make it to the party. And I'm so happy that I made it to the party. Like I was able to overcome that obstacle. And
Totally.
there's a guy who's in line. He comes up and he's like, hey, how much is it getting to the party? And I'm like, I don't remember like how much because I bought the ticket. And he's like, do you have 10 euros? My friend has my wallet, and I'll give you the money later on. I was so happy. I was like, yeah, man, here. Like I didn't even care. I was so happy that I made it. And he was like, we can hang out, just so you know. I was like, all right. I don't know anybody here. Turns out this guy knows everybody. I was like, I'm hanging out with all these different people, and that we're like passing weed around and shit. Like, like it was. I was like, what the fuck kind of night is this?
Yeah.
Um, but like that was like the starting point for me. And then to wrap up, like when I made it back home, I felt calm for the first time, like ever. I felt calm, and it wasn't like, oh, I relaxed on the beach and I feel calm. I feel less stress. Like I felt at peace,
Yeah.
and it took me a little bit to realize because I didn't. When you live with something, it's just like what it is. You don't realize it's a problem until it's gone, and you're like, oh man, that was really weighing on me. Um, But when I got home, I realized how at peace I was, and then I started thinking about it, and it was like throwing me into the deep end because everything is unfamiliar, everything is new.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never been to this place, I don't understand the local language, like everything is going to be completely new in 4 countries in 2 weeks, and I did it,
Yeah.
and I made it back safely, and I did it by myself,
Yeah.
and I met some people along the way, and it was a great experience. And from that point on, I felt like if I could do this, like I could do a bunch of stuff. And I started becoming more and more attracted to the unknown. Whereas before I was afraid of the unknown. And to this day, I kind of lost track. I think I've been to 11 countries throughout Europe, including Turkey. I've been to Germany 7 times. I'm going to go back to Germany this September, and then we're
Wow.
going to Turkey. But like traveling became a big thing because it was the unknown, and I met people and I became friends with people, and I keep in contact with them. So like I just started growing as a person because I started saying yes to stuff, and and that really changed my life. And so that's why I advocate for people to go and travel, solo travel, go by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Women too, just use common sense. But I've met women who's traveled by themselves as well, and they have a great time. Especially Europe. Europe is training wheels for solo travel. Like these cities are safe.
I love traveling by myself. I like after I went on vacation by myself for the first time before
Yeah.
COVID, and I was like, man, I'm never going on a vacation with anyone else ever again.
It's so nice and it's different. But one thing I will say, traveling with someone that you love and you both have the same type of traveling pattern is like it's the best. It's the absolute best. And my wife lets me lead and she trusts me, you know. And so like we'll be walking somewhere and I'll be like, get on the sidewalk because you're in the bike path, right? Just something simple like that. Because I'm watching out for her. I'm watching her back, and she likes that. I'm trying to keep her safe. So, but we have a very similar traveling style. We got together September 2019, and her birthday was in December 2019. And I was like, let's go somewhere. Where do you want to go? She's like, Paris. And I said, let's do it. And it was like 4 days later, we bought tickets and we went to Paris. And we spent 4 nights there. And that was the first time I told her I loved her. And we had a great time. And that's what kicked it off. But if you can travel with someone and have a good time, like that's a really good sign. Like stick with this person. And she's been open. She'll meet my friends, because when we went to Paris, there's a guy that I knew that lived in Paris, and we met up and we had lunch together, and we had a really good experience. And like that's one thing I love about my wife. I can bring her around anybody, and she's a great person. So like all these different things really started opening up because of traveling, and traveling opened me up as well to re-examine myself and let go of the anxiety that I was holding on to. And that really got me to get rid of the victim, right? Because the anxiety makes you nervous, and the anxiety makes you unsure about yourself. And then, you don't think that you can overcome certain things, and, there's something wrong with you. And why is there something wrong with you? Like you just start going down this path of negativity on a constant basis. And these days, like I'm not worried about anything.
Yeah.
Like I'm cool on the exterior, and I'm cool on the interior. And I feel great because of it.
Yeah, I love that story. I mean, it's exactly true. I mean, it's been my experience as well, that sort of doing things that are not in your comfort zone and doing the things that you feel anxiety about, sort of doing things that are, putting yourself in a situation that's unpredictable, that you can't control, and then either getting through that situation and it's fine, or you get through that situation and it's awesome and you meet new friends and you learn something new and you have a good time or whatever. I mean, it's super empowering, and it teaches you to trust yourself, right? So you don't have to feel that anxiety, because you'll be like, whatever, I'll figure it out. Like this is sort of how I feel in my life. I'm a pretty low stress person, but I think especially, because I've had scary situations. I've had uncomfortable situations. I have traveled on my own a lot, so I can go and talk to random strangers and talk to whoever and put myself in any kind of situation and be like, I'll figure it out. It'll be okay. I'm not going to stress about it too much. And I think that a lot of people don't learn that lesson, and I feel bad for them. People who sort of are like, I just want to be comfortable. So I want to have my condo, and I want to have my stuff, and I want to have my Netflix, and I want to have my route to work and my routine. And having a routine is great. Don't get me wrong. You have to have a routine for, things like exercise and being a healthy person in a lot of ways. But, and they have a lot of anxiety and they have depression. And I think that's a big part of it, is just getting way too into your comfort zone and not trying new things and not meeting new people and not being uncomfortable.
You're exactly right. And the other thing that I'll add is you don't trust yourself.
Yeah.
And when you start doing this, you have to listen to your instincts. And from a religious standpoint, I'll say that, I was agnostic for quite some time. Because I was unsure, and much in the same way I was unsure about God, I was unsure about myself. So I see I see a lineage when it comes to that, or not lineage, like a parallel when it comes to that.
Hmm.
The more I started trusting myself, the more I started trusting God, and the more I started to listen, because that instinct, like you can't quantify the instinct, you just know it's there, right?
Hmm.
You've traveled enough, you've been in a situation where you're like, something's off about this, let me get out of here, nice meeting you, and you just head out.
Yeah.
And it's because there's that instinct, and I feel like that is something that God gave us as a gift. And when we deny that about ourselves, then we struggle. um, and so I didn't want to deny God's gifts. Like that's in many ways, like his voice is my voice as far as the instinct goes. And so quite literally from that point on, I just listened to my instinct. We say listen to your gut, but like I listen to my instinct as far as people I interact with, places that I go, situations that I'm in,
Mhm.
avoiding certain people. And now that I'm doing media and being in this particular space, sometimes you got to use your instinct as far as people you associate with and don't associate with. Like
Yeah.
something's off about this guy,
Yeah.
and you just pull away. Or I just something about this person I really like, and you go closer to them. And every time I listen to my instinct, it works out. Anytime I say, yeah, I'm kind of feeling this way, but let me give him a shot, never works out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I I've become stronger in my faith as well, right? And that anxiety, it was like a block for me. um and removing that block allowed me to think clear about my life, about my purpose, what I want to do, about being a father, about being a man, um, and now being a husband, and trying to be the best husband I could possibly be, and being now at the stage where I'm hopefully getting baptized soon, and being a good Christian. Um, so I'm just that. I guess what I'm saying is like that kind of just opened up my entire life.
I think that's probably like the first time ever in my entire life that religion or God has made sense to me in any way. I'm being serious. I'm like, oh, because I don't get, like, I was not raised religious. I was raised in a family that was actively opposed to organized religion. And
Mm,
I just, like I appreciate it and I respect other people who are religious. I didn't when I was younger. I do now as an adult, but I don't get it. Like, I don't understand what people say when they believe in God or, bring God into your relationship. I don't understand I don't understand what faith means. I just don't like these concepts don't make sense to me. And I ask people to explain it to me and I still like I don't think I get it, but that does make sense to me. And I think it's like, I mean, I've thought about it in ways of like, trusting your gut, and especially trusting your gut as a woman, and like paying attention to like just weird vibes, not just these red flags that you can see in a list on an Instagram video or whatever, but just like,
right.
and this person's giving me a weird vibe, this space is giving me a weird vibe, I don't like this makes me uncomfortable, I don't even know why, and trusting that gut instinct. So anyway, I really appreciate you being able to articulate that for
Yeah,
me.
absolutely. No problem. And the way I see it is we are spiritual beings and we are physical beings. And I feel like that's our spiritual side.
Hmm.
Like you can't measure instinct, right? Like but we know it's there. You can't measure vibes,
Yeah.
right? But you know it's there. You sense it. So it's a sense that you have that you can't quantify, but you know it exists. So that's one of those areas where I guess if you want to apply God into the equation, what exactly is that and why does it exist, or how do we have that? Because we feel that maybe science explains all our sensory nerves and all this other stuff, and we know why we touch this part of our hand and it sends a signal here and there. But how do you quantify love? How do you quantify, um, instinct? How do you quantify all these things in a scientific manner? Yet we know it's there. So that's kind of like one of those areas where I think it's because we are not just physical, but we are also spiritual beings. And that is part of our sense that something is there. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you felt evil, and how do you quantify evil? Right?
Okay.
You just know. Like, there's something about it that you just know. There's something negatively spiritual about it that you just know. Have you ever had like night terrors,
Yeah, I
or
did.
like,
When I was a teenager, I it happened a lot, and then it's happened a few times since. But yeah, there was a period that I went through when I was probably around like 16 or 17, that it was happening every night.
yeah, I had an experience where, by the way, this is going to be an interesting podcast to listen to. We're
Totally.
talking about like all types of stuff.
And I didn't even get through like probably 75% of the questions I had planned.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But I had an experience where, um, I forgot the term that they use, where you can't move.
Yeah.
Um, and
That's what was happening to me, and you
sleep
see.
paralysis. They call sleep
Yeah.
paralysis.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had that experience of sleep paralysis. And it was like, I think it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. It was pitch black in my room. And I'm opening my eyes, but I can't move.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm awake.
Hmm.
And I remember hearing the most ominous voice. And it was like in my ear. And I could sense something, and it scared the shit out of me. Now, I sensed evil. Like, there was nothing beautiful about it. There was nothing good about what I felt. And I finally was able to move, and I jumped up out of my bed, and turned on the lights and made sure. I know what I heard. Like, I can still hear the voice in my head now, like that. So it's like, when you encounter evil, like, you don't forget stuff like that. And how do you quantify that? And some people were like, oh, that's in your head. I was awake because I could see, even though it was dark. But it was like, I've heard people talk about like, um, end of death experience. I'm sorry, end of life experience, where they experience death. And some people have stories, fascinating. You can go on YouTube and look them up. Fascinating stories about actually going to hell. But before they enter hell, they say that is so black, that is the blackest thing that you've ever seen. Like, they're just complete darkness. It's you can't quantify. And I remember waking up, and I knew I was awake, but something felt really dark in my
Hmm.
room. Like, it was really dark.
Hmm.
And hearing that voice, like, I was encountering evil, and I can't quantify that. And I know it wasn't, and I was agnostic at the time. So it's like, I'm not saying, oh, it's because of this, my spiritual, like, no, I don't even truly believe all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
I had those similar experiences too when I was a teenager, and I think I've had them sometimes as an adult, and it's like awful and super scary. But it was the same thing where I had sleep paralysis, so you're pinned down, you can't move. My eyes are open, and then I would see there would be figures in my room. One time I woke up and there was one of the figures was like on top of me, and I couldn't move, and you can't, and it was terrible, and I never knew what it was. It was like ghosts. And then you read about it online, and there's all these scientific explanations for it. But
I think it's demons.
yeah, they look
I
like demons
They
to
look like
me.
demons.
Like,
I mean, I think that is demons. And I'll tell you this. This is all going to sound crazy. So I had an ex-girlfriend who, long story short, I found out that she hears the other side. Like, she hears people who aren't there.
okay.
And she's like, I've been like that since I was a little kid. she's explained this to me. And I remember one day, this was after that event happened. I never told her, but I remember one day she looked at me and she said, listen, I know you're not a believer, but you're vulnerable because of that. And you need to pray before you go to sleep. And I remember at the time, I kept waking up like 2 a.m. I just kept like I was uneasy. I wasn't sleeping well, and I kept waking up. And I thought that was very weird. So I was like, all right. So I prayed before I went to sleep and asked God to look over me and assure that I sleep well. And I did that for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I remember feeling more at peace, in my room, like where I was at. And I was like, all that stuff it's too coincidental for me.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not a crazy person. I fully believe her. She's not off her rocker. Like, she's experiencing something. This is a highly intelligent person. And so I'm like, there's something there. And she felt the need to tell me that for some reason. And I didn't open up to her that I wasn't sleeping well at night or anything like that, but she felt the need to tell me for a reason. So, I look at all these different things, and I'm like, there's something more than what we can explain through science. Like, there are things that exist in this world that we just know, we sense, like and we're reacting to it, but we can't quantify what we're reacting to it. But yeah, there's definitely demons who are sitting on your chest. Definitely.
No, I mean, if anything's ever going to turn me into a believer, it's this podcast. I'm not even joking. It's just like, okay, this makes sense. I mean, I literally, like, it's like, I mean, yeah, they're like shadowy demon-like figures. It's Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I
And
know.
if you ever want to, like, I like anybody.
I mean, I'm gonna start trying. I've never prayed before in my life, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to do it. But I might start doing it before bed, just to be safe.
Yeah, just ask God to look over you as you sleep, and thank Him for His gifts. That's basically what I was trying to do when I prayed. But if you ever get a chance, go on YouTube and look up near-death experiences, and there are entire YouTube channels of people who have these stories, and I'm a pretty good sense of if someone's lying and if someone's acting.
Mm.
And these are like, sometimes they're telling us, they're just bawling their eyes out. And some of it is when they experience heaven, and some of it is when they experience hell. And like, one guy was shot. He was a gang member. He was shot in the chest twice, and he experienced hell. And he was brought back as they were resuscitating him. But he experienced hell, and he can detail. And the fascinating thing is, like, all these stories are eerily the same. Like, all their depictions are eerily the same. And then you start seeing stories of people who aren't familiar with Christianity. Like, there's one story, this guy is a Buddhist, and he killed himself, or he attempted to kill himself, and he went to hell. But in Buddhism, there is no hell. But yet, and he's not familiar with Christianity, but everything that he depicted was exactly like how Christianity depicts hell. And so, like, and there's an author, I actually got his audiobook I need to listen to. There's an author and he was agnostic before he started getting into this. He became a pastor. He went through thousands of interviews of people who were across the world. So not just in America, where we're in a Christian nation, or North America, more Christian oriented. We're familiar, even culturally familiar. He went to people. He read stories from people from all over the world, from Rwanda, like all over the place, where they may not even be familiar with Christianity. Parts of Asia where they're Buddhists. Like, he's reading all these near-death experience stories from these people, and their depictions are the same depictions that are within the Bible, and how exactly how they depict. So one woman, I think it was somewhere in Asia, she had a near death experience, and what she described was New Jerusalem in heaven. Now she's not familiar with heaven. She doesn't know any of this stuff, but everything that she's depicting is exactly like what they describe.
Crazy.
The people who went to hell, what they describe is exactly as what is depicted within the Bible. And like there's one story I watched where this guy said the scariest thing about being in hell is, well, there's two scary things above all, is that your spiritual body regenerates. And so part of the torture is that you're being tortured and rip off your skin, for example, and it regenerates. And it's painful. And it just keeps happening over and over. But the scariest part about being in hell as you're being tortured is when you realize this is it. This is forever. This is eternity
God.
of eternal suffering of a body that's constantly regenerating. And that's like when he's describing that, and like that hits you hard. And then you see all these stories that describe something very similar.
Hmm.
Like someone might be lying, sure, but I don't know. Thousands upon thousands of people are lying about very similar situations from all over the world, and their depictions of what they experience, whether it be heaven or hell, are of the Christian depiction, even if they're not familiar with Christianity. I'm just saying.
I mean, I'll tell you, this is a real big relief to me because I mean, I like the idea of heaven. I've always hoped that there would be some kind of like heavenly afterlife, but I'm not religious and I'm not Christian. So I'm like, as far as I know, this is it. Or, who knows, maybe it's something else. But,
Yeah.
I would prefer to go your route. I like this better. I guess that's presuming I'm not going to end up in hell. So I'm going to need to look into avoiding that. I don't think I've done anything that's deserving of hell, but I should make sure.
Yeah, that's a whole other gray area. And I don't like when people say you're going to hell. Like that's not it's not for me to judge someone whether they're going to hell or not, because I don't know if I'm going to hell or not. Like
No.
I'm trying to do the best that I can. Um, I think the aspect of Christianity that I do like and understand is that we are all broken. We're all flawed. We all sin. So even the people who wag their finger, they sin.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, the wagging of the finger, even towards someone like you who isn't a believer, is a sin.
Mm.
Um, so that acknowledgement that we are not perfect, and the whole purpose of Christianity is that Jesus Christ died on the cross for us because he's trying to save us. He's our savior. And so there is that acknowledgement that you are going to sin because we are all broken, but we are given grace because of it, and we ask for forgiveness because of it. So every day is a struggle as a human being because we are flawed. And I think that grace element is something that is incredibly hard to exercise in real life, which is why I talk about empathy so often,
Mm.
because having empathy, like genuine empathy for someone who is struggling, who's going through something, that's the grace that we need to have more of, that is nearly absent from politics, and even the cultural discussion. So there needs to be a better understanding as to why people are going through what they're going through. And there might be some crazy leftist who's doing X, Y, and Z, but I want to understand why they're doing that.
Mm.
And I think the more I look into it, the more I see suffering, the more I see doubt, the more I see loneliness, depression, anxiety. Like that's what I see more of when I look at these people, because they truly believe they're doing the right thing, just like I believe I'm doing the right thing. So, how do we come to some sort of conclusion when it comes to that? And we have to understand each other first before we can change anything.